The smell of coffee and bacon filled the small roadside diner that morning, mingling with the quiet hum of conversation. In the corner booth, an elderly man sat alone, his back straight despite his age, his hands weathered but steady as they cradled a chipped mug. His name was Samuel Sam Price, 81 years old, a decorated veteran who had served his country in a time when it wasn't always kind to men who looked like him. The waitress, a young woman named Claire, had been refilling his coffee when the front door swung open with a metallic chime. A group of bikers walked in, leather jackets creaking, boots heavy on the linoleum floor. Most were harmless enough, loud, sure, but laughing among themselves. But one of them, a tall man with a hard face and mean eyes, seemed to carry a different kind of energy. His gaze swept over the room and lingered on Sam. The old veteran didn't notice at first. He was lost in thought, perhaps remembering a comrade, perhaps just enjoying the peace of the morning. But the biker noticed him, and for reasons that would later make little sense, something in him decided that this man, this quiet figure in the corner, was worth provoking. It began with words. A muttered comment about old-timers who think they're special. Sam, always dignified, ignored it. But the biker wasn't done. He walked over, towering above the seated veteran, casting a long shadow across the booth. "Hey old man," he said, his tone dripping with mockery, "you think anyone cares about your medals?" Claire stepped back, sensing the tension. Sam looked up slowly, his voice calm but firm. "Son, I've seen things you can't imagine. I've fought so you could walk into a place like this without fear. Don't dishonor that." The biker's lip curled. Maybe it was the quiet authority in Sam's tone, maybe it was the fact that the old man didn't shrink. Whatever it was, rage flashed in his eyes, and before anyone could move, his hand came down hard across Sam's face. The sound of the slap cracked through the diner like a gunshot. For a moment, the room froze. The waitress gasped. A couple in the next booth stood halfway, unsure whether to intervene. Sam's head had turned with the force of the blow, but he didn't rise. He simply adjusted his glasses, straightened in his seat, and looked the man dead in the eye, not with fear, but with the kind of strength that doesn't need to be loud. Claire rushed to the counter, her hands trembling as she reached for the phone. "I'm calling the cops," she whispered to herself. But Sam placed a hand gently on her arm. "No," he said, his voice quiet but commanding. "Call my son." The number was simple enough, she dialed it without hesitation. Sam's words to his son were even simpler. "Son, I'm at Millie's diner. I need you here." He hung up without another word. The biker laughed, mistaking the calm for weakness. "What's he gonna do, old man? Bring your grandkids?" His friends chuckled nervously, though even they seemed unsettled by the stillness in Sam's demeanor. Minutes passed. The tension in the air thickened. The biker paced, muttering under his breath, while the other patrons pretended to eat but couldn't stop watching. Claire kept glancing toward the door. Then, the faint sound of engines began to rise in the distance. Not one. Not two. Many. The biker paused, his brow furrowing as the low rumble grew louder. The windows of the diner began to vibrate. Heads turned toward the parking lot, where a convoy of military motorcycles and trucks rolled in, the kind of disciplined formation that made it clear this wasn't random. And at the front, riding tall and steady, was a man in uniform, Sam's son. He stepped off his bike with measured precision, flanked by fellow soldiers, their presence filling the diner before they even crossed the threshold. The room went silent as the son walked directly to the booth where his father sat. He didn't speak at first. He looked at his father, then at the biker, and then down at the red mark on Sam's cheek. "You touch my father?" he asked, his voice low, even. The biker's bravado faltered. It was just but he never finished. The soldiers behind Sam's son closed in, their silent, watchful stares enough to drain the room of any remaining noise. Sam's son didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He leaned in close enough for the biker to feel the weight of every word. "You don't put your hands on a man who's bled for this country. You don't disrespect my father. And you don't walk away from this like it's nothing." By then, the biker's friends were inching toward the door, their swagger evaporating. But the son wasn't done. You're going to apologize. Right here. Right now. The biker's mouth opened, closed, then opened again. I'm sorry, he muttered. Sam's son shook his head. Louder. The words came out again, this time filling the diner. I'm sorry, sir. Sam gave a single nod, his face unreadable. The soldiers stepped back, but the message lingered in the air like a banner. Respect isn't requested, it's commanded when it's earned. And in that moment, every person in that diner understood two things: that the quiet strength of an old man can call forth an army, and that dignity, once challenged, will rise to meet its accuser with unshakable force. The biker sat stiff in his seat, his earlier bravado scattered like dust. The diner was so quiet you could hear the hum of the ceiling fan and the faint ticking of the wall clock. Sam's son didn't take his eyes off the man who had struck his father. Around them, the soldiers stood like pillars. Not threatening, but unmistakably present, a silent reminder that disrespect has consequences. Sam reached for his coffee, his hand steady despite the sting on his cheek. He took a slow sip, then looked at his son. You didn't have to bring all of them, he said softly, a hint of a smile in his voice. His son shook his head. Dad, for you, I'd bring the whole army. The words carried more than pride, they carried the weight of a lifetime of respect, a bond forged in both blood and honor. The biker mumbled another apology, this time without prompting. It wasn't just fear driving him now, it was shame. You could see it in his eyes, the sudden awareness that he had crossed a line not just with a man, but with history itself. Sam had lived through decades of service, through years when wearing a uniform didn't shield a black man from prejudice. He had fought for a flag that hadn't always fought for him. And yet here he was, at 81, still standing tall. Claire, the waitress, quietly refilled Sam's coffee, her hands no longer trembling. She glanced at him with a new kind of reverence. In her mind, she would later replay this moment not as a scene of conflict, but as a lesson in quiet, unshakable dignity, the kind that didn't need to shout to be heard. Sam's son gave a final nod to the soldiers, and one by one they stepped outside, engines roaring to life. The biker and his crew sat frozen as the convoy pulled away, the sound fading into the distance. The son stayed behind for a moment, resting a hand on his father's shoulder. Let's get you home, Dad, he said. Sam smiled faintly. Home's right here, he replied, nodding toward the half-empty mug in the warm sunlight spilling across the diner floor. That day, the people inside Millie's diner witnessed something rare. A confrontation that could have ended in chaos, but instead revealed the strength of legacy, the power of respect, and the unspoken truth that no man who has given everything for his country should ever be humiliated, especially not in front of his community. When this story reached justice in color, it wasn't told for shock value. It was told because it carried a message that mattered. In our work, we share moments that peel back the layers of everyday life to reveal deeper truths about who we are, where we come from, and how we must stand for each other. This wasn't just about an old man in a diner or a son arriving with soldiers. It was about generations of resilience, about the way black dignity refuses to be diminished, no matter how bold the challenge. Sam's story is a reminder that strength is not always loud, and justice is not always carried in a courtroom. Sometimes, it's in the steady eyes of a man who refuses to bow, and in the steady hands of those who will rise for him without question. It's in the spaces we claim, the respect we demand, and the way we teach the world, again and again, that our worth is not negotiable. In telling his story here, we hope you carry it forward. Because somewhere, right now, another Sam is sitting quietly, unaware that someone might try to test his resolve. And somewhere else, another son or daughter is ready to answer the call, with or without an army, because respect, once earned, is worth defending with everything we have.